In the operating room, the doctor looked straight into my eyes and I froze. The fluorescent lights above me hummed like distant bees. The air smelled of antiseptic and cold metal. My heart monitor kept time with a steady electronic pulse, counting down the seconds before they would put me under. She stepped closer, her surgical mask resting just below her chin, her gloved hands folded calmly at her waist. And in that moment, the world tilted. Because she looked exactly like my wife. My wife who died 8 years ago. Until her assistant called her last name. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 62 years old and I was never afraid of dying, not after I buried Laura. Laura died in what they called a single vehicle accident on a wet November highway. The kind of accident that closes a casket and ends conversations. The kind that leaves you with paperwork instead of answers. 8 years later, I found myself lying on an operating table at Memorial Ridge Medical Center, prepped for open heart surgery. Severe aortic stenosis, they said. I needed the valve replaced. I signed the consent forms with a hand that trembled more from memory than fear. The room was colder than I expected. They always are. Cold keeps the body stable, the nurse had explained. Cold also keeps you aware. I stared at the ceiling panels while a nurse adjusted my IV. My daughter Emily had squeezed my hand before they wheeled me in. "Dad, you're going to be fine," she'd said, her voice steady but her eyes glassy. I'd smiled at her. I've survived worse. What I didn't say was that surviving Laura's death had felt worse than any surgery ever could. The doors swung open with a soft mechanical sigh. 2 nurses entered, first speaking quietly to each other as they checked monitors and instruments. Then she walked in. The surgeon. Time didn't just slow, it fractured. She removed her cap for a moment to adjust it, and a strand of chestnut brown hair escaped near her temple. Laura used to tuck her hair behind her ear the same way when she was concentrating. The surgeon stepped closer, reviewing something on a digital tablet. Her profile came into full view. Same high cheekbones, same soft curve of her jaw, the same faint dimple on the left side that only appeared when she wasn't smiling but thinking. My lungs forgot how to work. It wasn't just resemblance, it was recognition. She looked up. Our eyes met. Hazel. Laura's eyes had been hazel, not green, not brown, but something in between that shifted depending on the light. I used to tell her they looked like autumn. These eyes were autumn. "Mr. Mercer," she asked, her voice calm, professional. Her voice wasn't Laura's, slightly deeper, more measured. But something in the cadence, the way she paused between syllables, scraped against old memories. I tried to speak. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. "You're in good hands," she said gently. "We'll take excellent care of you." The anesthesiologist stepped beside me, adjusting the mask near my face. And then her assistant entered, flipping through the chart. "Dr. Bennett," the assistant, said, "the patient is prepped. We're ready when you are." Bennett. The name landed like ice water poured directly into my veins. Laura's maiden name was Laura Bennett. She had dropped it when she married me. Mercer became her identity for 34 years. But Bennett had been the name on her old diplomas, the name engraved on her father's pocket watch, the name she'd once joked she missed because it sounded stronger. "Dr. Bennett," the assistant repeated. The surgeon didn't break eye contact with me. For half a second, just a fraction, something flickered across her face. Recognition? No, impossible. Laura died 8 years ago. I stood beside her sealed casket. I held Emily while she sobbed into my shoulder. I signed the death certificate. I watched them lower her into the ground. "Sir," the anesthesiologist said softly. "I'm going to start the anesthesia. Count backward from 10. My mind scrambled for oxygen. "Wait," I whispered. It barely made it past my lips. Dr. Bennett stepped closer, so close I could see the faint line near her left wrist where her glove met her skin. Laura had a birthmark there. A small crescent-shaped mark, barely noticeable unless you knew to look for it. My eyes locked onto the surgeon's wrist. And there it was. A crescent. Not identical, maybe slightly smaller, but in the same place. My heart monitor began to spike erratically. 10, the anesthesiologist prompted. 9, wanna win or it's a sir year. I stared into her eyes. 8. Her lips parted slightly. 7. She leaned closer, and I heard her whisper so faint I wasn't sure it was real. "I'm sorry," for what I tried to say, but my mouth no longer obeyed me. 6, 5. The room blurred at the edges. The overhead lights smeared into white halos. 4. Dr. Bennett's gaze never left mine. 3. If this was a hallucination, it was cruel. 2. Or maybe the world I'd accepted 8 years ago had never been real to begin with. 1. Darkness folded over me like a closing curtain. And the last thing I saw before everything went black was Laura's face staring back at me wearing another woman's name. When I came back to the world, it arrived in fragments. First sound. A steady mechanical beep, air hissing softly through tubing, someone's shoes squeaking faintly against polished hospital floors. Then pain. A dull, heavy ache in the center of my chest like someone had reached inside me and rearranged the furniture. I tried to open my eyes, but everything felt weighted: my eyelids, my tongue, my thoughts. "Mr. Mercer, can you hear me?" A woman's voice, not hers. I forced my eyes open. The ceiling above me was different now. Not the harsh white panels of the operating room, but softer lights filtered through pale blue curtains. Recovery. "You're in post-op," the nurse said, leaning into my field of vision. "Your surgery went very well." Surgery. Operating room. Her eyes. I tried to sit up too fast and the world tilted violently. "Easy," the nurse said, pressing a firm but gentle hand to my shoulder. "You need to rest." The doctor, I rasped. My throat felt scraped raw. "Where is she?" "She above her ward." "The surgeon, Dr. Bennett." The nurse glanced at the monitor, adjusting a setting. "Dr. Bennett completed the procedure and handed you off to recovery. She had another case scheduled." My pulse jumped. "She's still here in the hospital." "I'm not sure. Surgeons rotate quickly. You're stable. That's what matters." Stable. Nothing about this felt stable. I swallowed hard. "I need to see her." The nurse gave me the kind of look medical professionals reserve for patients still drifting in anesthesia fog. Patient, kind, dismissive. "You can speak with her during follow-up. Right now you need to breathe slowly and let your body adjust." She checked my IV, made a note on the chart, and stepped away. I closed my eyes, but not to sleep. I replayed it. The name, Bennett. The birthmark. The whisper. "I'm sorry." Sorry for what? Sorry for surviving. Or sorry for something much older. Footsteps approached lighter this time. Duratani Quintain. Emily. I opened my eyes again. She stood beside my bed, her blonde hair pulled back into a loose ponytail, her hands wrapped tightly around her purse strap like she needed something solid to hold on to. "You're awake," she breathed relief, washing over her face. "Oh my God, you scared me." I tried to smile, but it felt crooked. "Still here," I managed. She leaned down and kissed my forehead. The surgeon said everything went perfectly. They replaced the valve. "You're going to feel stronger than you have in years." "The surgeon," I said carefully. "What's her name?" Emily frowned slightly. "Dr. Bennett." "Why?" My heart thudded painfully. "What did she look like?" "Dad." She let out a soft, incredulous laugh. "You just came out of surgery." Emma insisted. "What did she look like?" She hesitated. "Brunette," she said slowly. "Early 50s maybe. Very calm." "Why?" Her eyes. Emily blinked, her eyes. "Hazel." She studied my face now, really looking at me. "I don't remember," she said. "Dad, what's going on?" I swallowed. "She looked exactly like your mother." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Emily's jaw tightened. "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." "Dad." Her voice dropped, careful but firm. "Anesthesia does weird things. People hallucinate. They dream vividly. You were under for almost 4 hours. She had Mom's birthmark." Emily stiffened. "What birthmark?" "On her left wrist, the crescent." Emily's gaze dropped instinctively to her own wrist. She had inherited a faint version of it. Laura used to joke that it was their secret moon. "That doesn't mean anything," she said quickly. Too quickly. "And her name." "What about it?" "Bennett." Emily stared at me. "Mom's maiden name," I finished. Her lips parted, then pressed into a thin line. "That's a common name," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she sat down in the chair beside my bed and rubbed her hands together, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. "You're tired," she said. "You've been through something major. Let's not spiral. I need to see her. Dad, I need to look at her without masks and lights and machines. I need to hear her speak without oxygen in my ears." Emily leaned back, exhaling sharply. "I'll ask," she said finally. "Okay, I'll ask if she's available for a post-op consult before discharge." I closed my eyes, relief and dread mixing in equal measure. She whispered something, I added quietly. Emily stiffened again. What? I'm sorry. For what, Akinari? Ikanin? I don't know. Emily stood abruptly. You need rest. But she didn't meet my eyes when she said it. Later that afternoon, a different doctor came in, a cardiologist I'd met briefly before surgery. He reviewed charts, discussed medication adjustments, praised the surgical precision of Dr. Bennett. She's one of the best we have, he said. You were lucky. Lucky? When he left, I asked the nurse again about seeing Dr. Bennett. She's no longer on site, the nurse replied. Her schedule rotated out this morning. This morning I pressed, right after my surgery. She completed her caseload. Caseload. Like I was just another file. That night alone in the dim hospital room, I stared at the ceiling. 8 years ago, I'd stood in a funeral home staring at another ceiling while they told me not to open the casket. Too much trauma, they said. Best to remember her as she was. I had been numb then, grief-stricken, trusting. Now I wasn't numb. I was awake. And the more awake I became, the less certain I felt about what I'd buried. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed softly on the tray table. Unknown number. For a long moment, I simply watched it vibrate. Then I answered. Hello? Silence. Then a woman's voice, low controlled. Stop looking for her. My blood ran cold. If you want your daughter safe, she added quietly. The line went dead. I stared at the phone long after the screen went dark. Whoever she was, she knew I'd started looking. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw two versions of the same face, Laura standing in a white silk blouse at our 20th anniversary dinner, and Dr. Bennett beneath surgical lights, her expression steady and unreadable. By morning, exhaustion had settled into my bones, but something else had taken root alongside it. Clarity. When you lose someone, suddenly your memory becomes selective. You hold on to the soft edges, the laughter, the warmth, the last hug, and you blur the rest because it hurts too much to look directly at it. But now, lying in that hospital bed with a fresh incision across my chest and a threat echoing in my ears, I forced myself to look. Laura's accident had happened on a Thursday. It was raining that night, the kind of cold, slanting rain that makes highways shine like glass. I had been home. We'd argued earlier that week about something small, I don't even remember what. A trip she wanted to take alone. Space, she'd called it. Just a few days to clear her head. At 2 a.m, a state trooper knocked on our door. Single vehicle accident, loss of control, instant. They never used the word dead at first. They circled around it. The car had gone off a bend near mile marker 17. There had been a fire, they said, structural damage. The body had been identified through dental records. Closed casket. I remember the funeral home director speaking in soft tones, his hands folded carefully. It's best not to open it, he'd said. The trauma was extensive. I had nodded. I was numb. Emily was shaking so hard I thought she might collapse. Laura's older brother, Mark Bennett, handled everything. He had always been decisive, protective, sometimes to the point of suffocating. I'll take care of it, he'd told me, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. You focus on Emily. And I had let him. That's what keeps replaying in my mind now. I had let him. Back in the present, the hospital discharged me mid-morning. Emily insisted on driving me home. The air outside felt sharper than usual, like the world had edges I hadn't noticed before. In the car, she kept glancing at me as if expecting me to say something. You didn't tell me about the call, she said finally. I turned my head slowly. What call? She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. The nurse mentioned you were agitated last night. Security reviewed hallway cameras because someone reported a disturbance near your room. I stared at her. You knew. She swallowed. Dad, I didn't want to stress you. Emily. Her voice cracked slightly. I got a message too. The words hit harder than the surgery had. What kind of message, yours to be Mary? She hesitated for a long moment before answering. An email from an anonymous address. What did it say? She pulled into my driveway but didn't turn off the engine. It said, let the dead stay buried. The house looked the same as always, pale blue siding, trimmed hedges. Laura used to obsess over the wind chime she'd hung on the porch, still clinking softly in the breeze. Nothing about it suggested deception. Emily finally killed the engine and faced me. I didn't tell you because I thought it was spam, or a prank, but after what you said about the surgeon. You think I imagined it, I said quietly. She shook her head. I don't know what to think. Inside the house, the air felt stale, like it had been holding its breath for years. I walked straight to the hallway closet where Laura had kept a small cedar box. I hadn't opened it in a long time. Emily watched as I carried it to the kitchen table and lifted the lid. Inside were documents, our marriage certificate, insurance papers, copies of Laura's driver's license, her old college transcripts, the ones that still said Bennett. At the bottom was the death certificate. I unfolded it slowly. Name Laura Ann Mercer, date of death November 14th, cause blunt force trauma consistent with motor vehicle accident, certifying physician Dr. R. Hastings. Not Bennett. But something else caught my eye. The time of death was listed as 2:17 a.m. I remembered the trooper saying the accident had been reported at 1:40 a.m. How long does it take to confirm a death at the scene, I murmured. Emily leaned closer. Why? If it was instant, why list a time nearly 40 minutes later? She frowned. Maybe protocol. Maybe. Or maybe not. I flipped through the rest of the papers. Funeral invoice, paid in full by Mark Bennett. I'd forgotten that part. Mark insisted, Emily said quietly, reading my thoughts. He said you shouldn't have to deal with finances on top of everything. I looked at her. When was the last time you spoke to Uncle Mark? She hesitated again, a few months ago. About... She bit her lip. About money. My stomach tightened. What kind of money? She exhaled slowly. After Mom died, a trust was set up. For me? I stared at her. A trust. Yes, Uncle Mark managed it. And it's still active. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Active how? Deposits, she said softly, quarterly. From who? She met my eyes, and for the first time since I'd woken up, I saw fear in hers. They're labeled anonymously. My heart thudded painfully against my stitches. How much? Enough. Silence stretched between us. Emily, I said carefully, did you ever see your mother's body? She closed her eyes. No. Did you ever question it? I was 26, Dad. I trusted you. I trusted Uncle Mark. I trusted the system. So had I. And now, piece by piece, that trust felt like paper dissolving in water. I stood slowly, ignoring the protest from my chest. I'm going to see Mark. Emily stood too. Dad, you just had heart surgery. I'm not going to fight him, I said. I just need to look him in the eye. Before I could reach the door, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time I answered on speaker. Yes. A man's voice this time, calm, controlled. You should have left it alone, Daniel. My blood ran cold. Who is this? A pause. Then, you have no idea what she was running from. The line went dead. I looked at Emily. Running, I repeated softly. From what? Or from who? I didn't go to Mark's house that afternoon. I drove there. But I never made it past the end of his street. His neighborhood hadn't changed in 8 years. Same wide lawns, same identical mailboxes, same carefully spaced American flags clipped to front porches. Mark had always liked symmetry, order, control. I pulled over 3 houses down from his and shut off the engine. Emily sat beside me silent. You don't have to come, I said. I know, she replied. But if this is real, I don't want you doing it alone. I studied Mark's house from a distance. 8 years ago, he'd stood beside me at the funeral home, his arm around my shoulders guiding every decision. He'd arranged the casket, the service, the burial. He'd even insisted on speaking first at the graveside. Laura deserved dignity, he'd said. Dignity, not truth. Dad, Emily said quietly, there's something I didn't tell you. My eyes shifted to her. What? She stared straight ahead at her uncle's house, her voice tightening. 3 months after Mom died, I got a letter. My pulse quickened. What kind of letter? She swallowed. No return address, just my name. And it had a cashier's check inside. For how much? $25,000. The number hit me like a second incision. What turn on her? I didn't know what to do. I thought it was a mistake, but Uncle Mark called me the next day. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What did he say? He said Mom had made arrangements before the accident, that she'd wanted me taken care of. He told me not to question it, and you didn't. She turned to me, eyes bright with frustration. I was grieving Dad. I just lost my mother. I didn't want to fight with the only adult who seemed calm. Calm. That had always been Mark's strength. He never raised his voice, never rushed. He just positioned people gently until they stood exactly where he wanted them. What did the letter say? I asked. She hesitated. It said, trust what you were told, don't dig. The same language. Let the dead stay buried. Stop looking for her. I stared at Mark's house again. This isn't random, I said. No. And the deposits into your trust, they started the same month as that check. My chest ached, not from the surgery. From realization. She didn't die, I whispered. Emily's breath hitched. You think she staged it? I don't know, I admitted. But someone is paying to keep us quiet. We sat there for another minute before I restarted the engine. We're not going in, she asked. Not yet. I drove away slowly. If Mark was involved, walking in blind would only push him further into silence. Instead, I headed toward Memorial Ridge again. Dad, I'm not confronting anyone, I said. I just want to see something. The hospital lobby buzzed with its usual quiet efficiency, wheelchairs rolling, volunteers offering directions, families clutching coffee cups like lifelines. I approached the front desk. I'm looking for Dr. Eleanor Bennett, I said carefully. The receptionist typed quickly. She's in surgery today, cardio suite. Does she have office hours? She rotates between hospitals. Of course she did. Could you tell me when she'll be back here? I'm sorry, sir. We can't disclose physician schedules without authorization. Emily tugged lightly at my sleeve. Dad, look. Across the lobby, mounted on the wall near the surgical wing, was a framed board listing attending surgeons. Dr. Eleanor Bennett, MD, cardiothoracic surgery. Below it was a smaller plaque. Formerly affiliated St. Catherine's Medical Hartford. Hartford. Laura and I had lived in Connecticut for 3 years early in our marriage, before Emily was born. Let's go, I murmured. We stepped closer to the plaque. There was a professional headshot attached to her name. Clear. Unmasked. My breath left my body. It wasn't just resemblance under surgical lighting. It was her. Slightly older, hair shorter, expression firmer. But the same woman I had kissed goodbye the morning of her accident. Emily's hand tightened around mine. Oh my God, she whispered. The lobby seemed to fall away. She's alive, Emily said faintly. I stared at the photo. Underneath her credentials was a short biography. Dr. Bennett relocated to Colorado 8 years ago after completing advanced trauma specialization. She is known for her discretion and commitment to patient confidentiality. 8 years. The exact year Laura died. My pulse pounded painfully in my ears. Then I noticed something else. On the biography was a line that most people would ignore. Previously practiced under a different name due to legal circumstances. My stomach dropped. Emily looked up at me slowly. Legal circumstances. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Daniel. Mark's voice. Calm as ever. You shouldn't be at the hospital. Cold swept through me. How do you know where I am? I told you once, he said gently. Laura deserved dignity. Is she alive? I demanded. Silence. Is she alive, Mark? You don't understand what she was running from. From who? I shouted, ignoring the curious glances in the lobby. From you. The word hit harder than any threat. That's a lie. Is it? His voice remained maddeningly even. You think you knew everything about your wife, about the choices she had to make? Emily stepped closer, listening. You buried a closed casket, Mark continued. You signed what they put in front of you. You wanted it over. You wanted your grief neat and organized. That's not true. Isn't it? My hands shook. If you keep digging, Mark said softly, you won't just ruin her new life. You'll destroy your daughters. The line went dead. Emily stared at me. New life, she repeated. My gaze drifted back to the photo on the wall. Dr. Eleanor Bennett. Not Laura Mercer. Not Laura Bennett. Someone in between. Dad, Emily whispered. If she's alive, why hasn't she come back? That question hurt more than anything else. I looked at the woman in the frame. At the woman who looked exactly like my wife. And for the first time since the operating room, I felt something heavier than shock. Betrayal. Betrayal has a strange way of arriving quietly. It doesn't explode, it settles. It seeps into your bones and waits. That night after the hospital lobby confrontation and Mark's voice still echoing in my ears, Emily and I sat at the kitchen table long after the sun had gone down. Neither of us turned on the overhead light. The house glowed dimly from a single lamp in the living room, shadows stretching across the hardwood floor like unanswered questions. "She's alive," Emily said again, as if repeating it would make it less surreal. "I don't know that," I said automatically. "Dad." I didn't correct her again. Because deep down I knew. The plaque, the timing, the relocation, the legal circumstances, the money. It wasn't coincidence anymore. It was design. I stood slowly, my chest aching with every movement, and walked back to the cedar box in the hallway closet. If Laura had planned something, there would be a trace. She had never been careless. Even when she felt overwhelmed, she left breadcrumbs notes in margins labeled folders, contingency plans for everything from plumbing repairs to college tuition. I spread every document across the table. Marriage certificate, mortgage records, insurance policy. Then I found it. A folded legal envelope tucked between old tax returns. It was dated 2 weeks before the accident. Addressed to Laura A. Mercer. Inside was a letter from a law firm I didn't recognize. Bennett and Rowe, attorneys at law. The coincidence made my hands tremble. The letter was brief. Mrs. Mercer. As discussed, the protective trust has been executed. Assets have been transferred according to the contingency agreement. Please confirm receipt of the updated beneficiary designations. Protective trust. Contingency agreement. Beneficiary designations. Emily leaned over my shoulder. "This isn't about college savings," she whispered. "No." I flipped to the second page. There was a line near the bottom. "In the event of irreversible relocation, all further correspondence will be directed under the name E. Bennett." Irreversible relocation. I felt the room shift. "She didn't die," Emily said softly. "She relocated." I stared at the signature. Laura's handwriting was unmistakable, rounded, deliberate. But beneath her signature was another line. Witnessed by M. Bennett. Mark. My pulse thudded heavily. "He knew," Emily said. "He didn't just know," I replied quietly. "He facilitated it." I reached for my phone. "What are you doing?" Emily asked. "I'm calling the law firm." The number on the letter still connected. A receptionist answered, her tone polite but guarded. "Bennett and Rowe." "My name is Daniel Mercer," I said carefully. "I have a letter from your firm dated 8 years ago. I need to speak to someone about a protective trust." There was a pause as she typed. "I'm sorry, sir. That file is sealed." "Sealed by who?" "I'm not authorized to disclose that information. I'm her husband." According to our records, she said, voice flattening slightly, Mrs. Mercer legally terminated spousal authority prior to relocation. My hand tightened around the phone. "Relocation where?" "I cannot provide that." Emily's eyes widened. I swallowed hard. "Is she alive?" Silence on the other end. Then, Hector? I'm not authorized to answer that question. The call ended politely. Too politely. I lowered the phone slowly. "She terminated spousal authority," Emily repeated. "That means she legally separated herself from me before the accident." Emily's voice trembled. "But you didn't divorce." "No." "Then what does that mean?" "It means she planned to disappear." The words felt foreign in my mouth. Disappear. From me. From us. From her life. I sat down heavily. Emily moved closer. "Dad," she said gently, "what if it wasn't about you?" Mark's voice echoed again. "You don't understand what she was running from." "Mark said she was running," I murmured. "From you," Emily added carefully. I flinched. "I never hurt her." "I know that," she said quickly. "But what if it wasn't physical? What if it was something else, debt, legal trouble, someone threatening her?" My mind searched for cracks in the past. There had been tension in the months before the accident. Quiet arguments. Laura taking phone calls in another room. Her sudden insistence on organizing financial paperwork. I had chalked it up to stress. But what if it had been preparation? My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't unknown. It was a message from a private email address. The subject line read, "If you want the truth." Inside was a single sentence. "Meet me alone. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Riverside Park." And beneath it, E.B., Eleanor Bennett. Or Laura. or whoever she had become. Emily read over my shoulder. You can't go alone. I have to. She could be manipulating you. She could also be the only one who will tell me why. Emily exhaled slowly. I'm coming with you. No. Her jaw tightened. She's my mother too. I met her eyes. If she wanted you there, she would have said so. The truth of that settled heavily between us. Emily looked away first. What if she doesn't want us back, she whispered. That question sliced deeper than any accusation Mark had thrown. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. All I knew was that tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I would be standing across from the woman who either died 8 years ago or chose to let me believe she had. And somehow I would have to decide whether I wanted the truth badly enough to survive it. Riverside Park had always been Laura's favorite place. She used to say the water made her feel steady, that watching something flow without hesitation reminded her that life didn't have to be forced. We had brought Emily there as a child to feed the ducks, to ride bikes along the paved trail, to sit on the old wooden bench near the river bend. That bench was where she told me she was pregnant. It was where we argued about moving back east. And now, 8 years after I lowered her casket into the ground, it was where I waited to see if my grief had been built on a lie. I arrived at 2:40 p.m., 15 minutes early. The sky was overcast, the air cool enough to sting my lungs with every breath. I wore a jacket even though I didn't feel cold. I felt exposed. I sat on the bench. The river moved calmly beside me, indifferent to human secrets. At exactly 3:02 p.m., I heard footsteps on gravel behind me. I didn't turn immediately. I already knew. When I finally looked over my shoulder, she was standing there. No surgical mask. No hospital lighting. Just a woman in a charcoal coat, hair shorter than Laura had ever worn it, streaked lightly with gray. But it was her face. Her eyes. The faint crescent at her wrist. Time did not fracture this time. It slowed into something heavy and unbearable. Daniel, she said quietly. Her voice. Slightly lower than I remembered. But unmistakable. I stood slowly, every movement deliberate. Laura. She flinched. That's not my name anymore. I swallowed. You can't expect me to call you anything else. Silence stretched between us. Up close, I could see subtle differences. A faint scar near her jawline I didn't recognize. A hardness in her posture. But her eyes were the same Autumn I'd memorized for 34 years. You look... Well, she said awkwardly. You buried me. Her composure cracked for a second. I know. Did you need your... Her lips parted, then pressed together again. I didn't have a choice. Everyone says that when they do something unforgivable. She closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. I never wanted to hurt you or Emily. But you did. Her gaze dropped to the river. I was being investigated. For what? For something I didn't do. The wind picked up slightly rustling leaves along the bank. Explain, I said. She inhaled deeply. 8 years ago, I discovered financial irregularities in Mark's business accounts. My stomach tightened. Your brother. Yes. He was moving money illegally, offshore accounts, shell companies. And when I confronted him, he told me to forget I'd seen anything. My chest felt tight again, not from the surgery. You threatened to expose him. Yes. And he threatened you. The words landed heavily. He said if I went to authorities, you would be implicated, that the transactions could be traced through shared accounts. He said Emily's trust would be frozen. He said you'd both lose everything. So you staged your death. I was advised to disappear. By who? An attorney, a federal contact. You entered witness protection. Her silence was answer enough. But Mark's still walking around free. They needed evidence, she said sharply. Years of it. And what about us, I demanded. We weren't evidence. We were your family. Her eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. If I had told you, you would have tried to fix it. Yes. And that would have put you directly in danger. You let me bury an empty box. Her jaw trembled. There wasn't a body. I know. We stood there in the thick air of everything unsaid. You could have told Emily, I whispered. She was being monitored. And now, Mark doesn't know we've spoken. So you're still running. I'm not running, she said, voice tightening. I've been working, building a case, every move he makes. From an operating room, From everywhere. The river kept moving. And the money, I asked. The trust, she replied quietly. That was me. You've been paying our daughter to stay silent. I've been protecting her. By bribing her. By making sure Mark never had leverage. I stared at her. You could have trusted me. I did trust you, she said softly. That's why I stayed away. The logic twisted in my mind. Mark said you were running from me. Her eyes flashed. He would. Silence fell again. Why now, I asked. Why show up as my surgeon? I didn't choose that, she said. When your name appeared on my surgical list, I panicked. You could have reassigned me. I tried. And I couldn't risk another surgeon digging into your records. Cold realization crept in. You're still protecting me. Yes. I shook my head slowly. This is insanity. Daniel, Surdi Rawana. No, I interrupted. You don't get to call me that like nothing happened. Her composure broke then. A tear slipped down her cheek. I watched you from a distance, she whispered. I made sure you were safe. I tracked your medical updates through private channels. When your valve condition worsened, I pulled strings to be assigned to this hospital. You've been watching us. Protecting you? I felt anger and something dangerously close to relief twist together inside me. You could have told me. I couldn't. And now, Ichuri Herbexio, now Mark's case is closing. What does that mean? It means soon I won't have to disappear anymore. A sharp sound cut through the air, a car door slamming in the parking lot behind us. Her eyes flicked toward the noise. We don't have much time, she said urgently. For what? For you to decide. Decide what, whether you want to know everything. She reached into her coat pocket and handed me a small envelope. Inside is a DNA confirmation. My heart lurched. DNA. Mark tried to question my identity legally once, she said quickly. To claim I wasn't Laura and seize certain assets, I had to prove I was. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a laboratory report. Name Eleanor Bennett, formerly Laura Ann Mercer. Identity verification, 99.98% match to prior medical records and spousal DNA reference. Spousal DNA reference. She had taken a sample from me. When I whispered, during surgery, the world narrowed. You used my operation to confirm my identity. I needed documentation. The report blurred in my vision. I had expected the DNA to reveal deception. Instead, it confirmed something worse. She had never stopped being Laura. She had simply chosen not to be my wife. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. 99.98%. Clinical language for something deeply human. Laura Eleanor stood across from me at Riverside Park, her coat shifting slightly in the wind, her eyes searching my face the way they used to when she tried to predict my reaction before I spoke. For 8 years, I had mourned a woman who was not dead. Now I stood in front of a woman who had not been mine for 8 years. Those are two very different kinds of loss. You used my surgery, I said slowly, to confirm you were still legally yourself. I had to secure the case, she replied quietly. Mark has been trying to undermine my testimony for years. He needed proof I wasn't an imposter, that I hadn't fabricated my identity. So you took my DNA without telling me. I used a spousal reference. It was the fastest way. The fastest way, I repeated. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Daniel, if Mark discredits me, everything collapses. The investigation, the protection, the truth. And you never once thought I deserved to know. Her jaw tightened. Every day. Then why didn't you? Because if I told you, you would have tried to fix it. Yes, I said without hesitation. And that's exactly why I couldn't. The river moved beside us, steady and indifferent. I remembered sitting on the same bench years ago, Laura's head resting on my shoulder, while she described a medical journal article she'd been reading. She'd always loved solving problems. Apparently, she had solved this one by erasing herself. Does Emily know everything, I asked. She knows enough. She deserves more than enough. Her eyes softened. I know. Then tell her. I will, when it's safe. When will that be? Soon. I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. You've been saying that for 8 years. A long silence passed between us. Finally, I asked the question that had been waiting beneath everything else. Did you ever plan to come back? She didn't answer immediately. Yes, she said at last, but not as the woman who left. What does that even mean? It means I had to become someone strong enough to finish what I started. And what did you start? Stopping him. Her voice had steel in it now. For years, Mark has siphoned money from clients, exploited vulnerable investors, and buried evidence. I gathered documentation before I disappeared, enough to open a federal inquiry. But I needed time. I needed distance. And you needed us to believe you were dead. Her eyes filled again. I needed you safe. The anger inside me had burned hot at first. Now it burned slower, heavier. Did you love me? I asked quietly. Her breath caught. I never stopped. That's not the same as staying. I know. A car engine started in the parking lot. She glanced over her shoulder briefly. They're watching, she said. Who? Mark still has people loyal to him. If he suspects we're working together. We're not working together, I interrupted. You made that decision alone. Her shoulders sagged slightly. You're right. I looked down at the DNA report again. Proof of identity. Proof that the woman in front of me was the same one I had married. And proof that she had chosen a different life. You protected us, I said slowly, but you didn't trust us. She nodded once painfully. That's fair. The honesty caught me off guard. I don't know how to forgive this, I admitted. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? That you don't let Mark win. I looked up sharply. He's closer to indictment than he's ever been, she continued. If you pull back now, if you create public conflict, he'll use it to discredit everything. He'll say I'm unstable, that I fabricated threats. And what do you want from me? Nothing official, she said, just patience. I almost smiled at that. Patience, I repeated. You buried me in grief for 8 years and now you want patience. She stepped closer, lowering her voice even more. I want a chance to fix what I broke. The river kept moving. I realized something then, something I hadn't allowed myself to think about since the operating room. I wasn't just angry. I was relieved. Relieved she hadn't burned in a car. Relieved she hadn't suffered alone. Relieved that the last memory I had of her wasn't truly the end. Relief is dangerous. It softens edges you think you need. I can't promise forgiveness, I said finally. I know. I can't promise trust. I know. But I can promise this. She looked up. I won't protect Mark. A flicker of gratitude crossed her face. And I won't pretend you're dead anymore. Tears slipped down her cheeks, then unrestrained. I don't expect you to come back, I continued. Not as my wife. That part of us, it's different now. She nodded slowly. But Emily deserves her mother, I said, in whatever form that looks like. I want that, she whispered. Then start there. A breeze moved through the trees, scattering leaves across the path. For a moment we stood in silence, not as husband and wife, not as strangers, but as two people who had survived something neither of us had understood at the time. I have to go, she said softly. I know. She hesitated, then reached out and briefly touched my hand. Her touch was familiar. Too familiar. Then she stepped back. I'll contact you when it's done, she said. When Mark is finished. And then, then we see what's left. She turned and walked toward the parking lot. I didn't call after her. I watched until she disappeared from view. The bench creaked as I sat back down. 8 years ago, I thought I had lost my wife. Today I learned I had lost something more complicated than that. But I also gained something unexpected. The truth. It isn't clean. It isn't painless. But it's real. If you've ever uncovered a truth that changed everything you believed, I want to know what that felt like for you. Leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. We share stories like this every day, stories about lost resilience and the complicated ways love survives. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Let's keep walking this journey together.